Welcome to this series of videos where we look not at animation but instead aesthetics in Metroid games, specifically how they build their atmosphere. So far, we've seen how Metroid games can portray an atmosphere of dread, isolation, horror and fear by establishing certain series staples, such as constant black backgrounds, unsettling and creepy music and soundscapes, and vast distances between safe spots and power-ups, combined with backtracking. Series staples now remain present in future Metroid games, such as an unsettling score, creepy sound design, grotesque creatures, isolated exploration in a dark and dank environment, and placing you in tense situations. We'll now be taking a look at specific examples in a Metroid game which manufacture fear particularly well, rather than the game as a whole. This time we're looking at Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance. There's a couple of things that are different in this game compared to Metroid or Super Metroid. Progression is linear and not open-ended. This might seem to go against what you might like to consider a required aspect of a Metroid game, but in a positive way, this allows the game to manufacture certain situations and events that perhaps aren't possible or as satisfying when the game is open-ended. This game lays breadcrumbs to build its tense atmosphere. We'll come to the other thing in a moment, but before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's quickly discuss the themes of each game so far. If each game so far were to have an overall theme, you could argue Metroid's is adventure, Metroid 2's is isolation, and Super Metroid's is triumph, though feel free to suggest your own down below. This brings us to argue that Metroid Fusion's theme could almost certainly be seen as mystery. This theme drips from almost every element of Fusion, from story and stage design to the music design and visuals. The story has Samus investigate an explosion at a space station after she's recovered from a near-fatal experience with new enemy the X-Parasite, their re-emergence supposedly thanks to Samus' eradication of the Metroids in Metroid 2. There's a particular line after learning of an explosion on the station that Samus thinks during this opening plot. This awakened a nameless fear in my heart. Not only are you experiencing dread and tension while playing a Metroid game, now you explicitly know that our hardened hero Samus is scared, and she doesn't know why. Straight away, you're on edge. You now have a nameless fear in your heart. Something the game excels at is making good use of low strings in its music to create a proper, tense atmosphere.
So the longer the note, the more dread.
Horror and gore are increased much more in this game as well, from things like dripping slime and skeletal remains to grotesque transformations. Okay, so bringing us back to the breadcrumbs motif. What I mean here is that the game will drop various bits of information slowly about an event, character or mission, and you'll gradually learn more about these situations as you experience them firsthand. You'll find the game does this a lot with the bosses and events in each sector, and the use of slowly building this up to an extremely tense situation does something to you. It convinces you that this is fear. Okay, so this is the other thing the game does, and indeed many other games that are horror or fear-based. It disguises tension as fear. Tension and fear are very similar, both get your heart rate up and have you on the edge of your seat, squirming to get away. Except fear is subjective, and tension is objective. Something that's scary to you won't be scary to someone else, but creating tension in place of fear, that's real for everyone. Imagine a scary figure. It might scare someone, but probably not. Imagine a tense situation, like trying to defuse a bomb with a time limit. Everyone's bound to be on edge during this. But if you combine these two things into a new situation, say you're trying to get a door open while the figure slowly approaches you, the tension from the door transforms into fear towards the figure. Okay, let's look at 2 or 3 examples of how Metroid Fusion does this particularly well. Let's start small and work up, shall we? Okay, so first up, it's the Arachnus boss at the beginning. So far you've had a pretty uninteresting opening in the form of just going through some corridors and investigating an explosion and speaking to your computer. You're told that you have to download missile data so that you can defend yourself. You already have the knowledge that the X-Parasite can mimic living creatures, and so far you're confident that the station is practically autonomous and everything should run as normal. You're also told that you have an actual defense percentage, and it's very low. When you get your missiles, you're told that something has messed with the electrics and the elevator is out, and you'll need to find a new way out of the room to reach this area, which is where the threat is. You blast your way through this metal hatch and go into the walls, essentially. You'll fall past some huge wires that appear to be severed. You'll then go through this communal looking area with resident zombies and flickering lights, and your first door monster thing. When you enter the pre-boss fight room, the music becomes tense, and as you drop into the main battle room, you see some X-Parasites forming together to make this monster. The music and sound design form this kind of reveal of what the monster is, and then you'll fight it and you'll complete everything. This is very basic, but it sets the format for the rest of the game. You're told of a disturbance, you see evidence of the disturbance, you face the disturbance, all the while being littered with bits of information that remind you of how powerless you are, how isolated you are, and how dangerous this all is. Okay, so secondly, it's probably one of my favourites. It's that grotesque monster, Nightmare. You see Nightmare earlier in the game in Sector 5, although you're not aware of what it is, only hearing its unusual sound as it roars past in the background. This will probably make you jump because this hasn't happened so far going through Sector 5. Nothing is mentioned of the beast until it breaks free later on, when all the glass is shattered and it's no longer there in the background. Your computer has told you that it's done some pretty hefty damage to Sector 5, and you know it's a pretty big monster, and that it's now out there in the game world for you to bump into. You've no idea when or even if this will happen, but most encounters with creatures in the game so far have ended with them being consumed by the X, something your computer constantly reminds you of is a very bad thing. As you progress trying to find it, you'll see rooms with massive amounts of damage, doors that are broken and unusable, and areas flooded with water. You finally discover a way to your target zone and descend into the junk room. As it rises out of the junk, lit from underneath and with a purple glow, immediately you know this isn't a normal boss battle. There's only a few bosses in this game with their own battle music, and this one is certainly unusual. Slowly rising in a pizzicato manner, creeping up. There's nothing exciting or powerful about this music, and it's designed to throw you off balance and creep you out. Visually, there's that horrible mask with dripping eyes, those undulating, dangerous arms, and Nightmare's overall weird ability to warp gravity, literally throwing you off balance, sending the fight into a psychedelic frenzy. Once you've hit it enough times, its mask breaks off, revealing this hideous looking mess underneath with a gaping mouth, dripping face and 6 eyes, and as the fight goes on, the face melts further and further and further. Nightmare moves forward slowly, creeping towards you, forcing you to quickly find a way to cause it damage before it crushes you. Remember the door and figure scenario I said at the beginning? Nightmare is the subjective fear, while the thought of being crushed by this monstrosity is the objective tension. The fight is won, you get the gravity suit, and on you go. Tension broken by relief. I love Nightmare, it's built up so well. Clumsily handled in Other M, but we'll get to that in another video. Okay, and finally, my favourite atmosphere arc is how your nightmarish evil doppelganger SA-X is introduced and handled throughout the game. The breadcrumbs are laid so early, and some don't even fully pay off until the end of the game. It starts right at the beginning with this mysterious explosion. You don't know what caused it, but you never expect to find out. When you go down the elevator to the other sections, the camera doesn't follow you. Then there's that huge explosion with those cold footsteps. And it looks at the camera with cold dead eyes and that screeching noise. Then proceeds to destroy the door ahead, and it continues to cause damage off screen. Your computer doesn't know what it is, and that's all you hear for a short while, until it presents the information it finds with a jump scare. And it tells you to run if you ever encounter it. It tells you to run. I mean, yeah, that's already pretty tense, knowing that this could happen at any point from now on. And there's nothing you can do to damage it. Then you get the bomb data, and there's an explosion, and those footsteps, and the door has been destroyed. Yeah, you know who it is. I mean, man, you haven't even encountered the SA-X yet, but you're already wishing it never existed. A little later, you'll come back to a door you've been through, and it's also been destroyed. As you work your way through, you'll drop into this darkened area, lit up only by the SA-X. Those scary footsteps are back, now accompanied by low strings and a heartbeat kind of sound. Remember that nameless fear in your heart? Breathe a sigh of relief, you won't encounter the SA-X for a bit. Okay, so let's recap so far. We've got an unexplained explosion, an unknown agent who looks like you destroying doors, and your first powerless encounter. It next makes its appearance at this little scene, where you're forced to go into a tunnel. It uses a power bomb, and then you're totally exposed. Played right, you can stay put and avoid it, but play it wrong and it will give chase, and you'll have to act quickly to avoid death. You'll encounter the SA-X like this a few more times with similar results, with you growing in strength but still unable to cause it any damage, requiring you to run each time. And the encounter is always unexpected. This one right here, after finding the reactor core, is particularly notable because you're dropped straight into its room. And it will give chase, and you will have to run, and you will have to open doors when it's chasing you down. You'll eventually find it attempting to destroy a bunch of secret Metroids before being destroyed itself, and then learning that there are in fact a number of SA-Xs aboard the ship, meaning each one you encountered might likely have been a new one each time. This whole arc ends with you facing off with one final SA-X right before you set the station on a fatal course with the nearby planet. In a final twist, the core from an SA-X is what saves you in a final fight. This breadcrumb design can be found in loads of places in the game, like with Ceres and the discovery of its remains, the choked up reactor, the mysterious bird statue, Ridley's remains, and the Metroid husks, just to name a few. There's many things this game does well. I mean, the sound design alone does a lot of heavy lifting, and the enemy design is just great. But personally, these are the things that I believe give the game its brilliantly rich atmosphere. These sorts of things, in retrospect, are present in Metroid 2 and Super Metroid in minor ways, such as the discovery of the shattered infant Metroid case in Ridley's lair, and finding empty Metroid shells in Metroid 2. But this breadcrumb and tension design, I feel, is pretty much the identity of Metroid Fusion. I look forward to breaking down some of the techniques Metroid Prime uses in completely drawing you into its atmosphere in the next video. Tentative release date of... You can be one of the special gang on Patreon who helps me shape and structure my videos, and be the first to see them. Just click here. Thanks for watching, I look forward to chatting to you in the comments. Love you, bye.